Libra is painted as the sign of beauty, harmony, and balance, the peacemaker, the lover of fairness, the one who keeps the scales steady. But beneath that image lies a secret, a hidden trap that few ever see, because the same scales that promise harmony can also become chains of control. The Libra path is not only about charm and diplomacy, it is about masks. It is about the weight of silence carried to avoid conflict. It is about the soul that bends so far to keep the peace that it forgets the sound of its own voice. This is the story that was never told in horoscopes or glossy pages. It is the ancient truth of Libra, the shadow that turns harmony into prison, and the way out that leads not to people-pleasing, but to real liberation. Libra has always been painted as the one who keeps the peace, the diplomat who smooths over conflict, the friend who makes everyone feel at ease. Their charm is undeniable. Their presence, often magnetic, softens rooms, turns arguments into conversations, and draws people toward them. It is no wonder that in astrology books and horoscope columns, Libra is described as the sign of beauty, balance, and harmony. Yet beneath that surface image lies something deeper, something hidden, something less comfortable. The very qualities that make Libra beloved often mask a struggle they carry quietly within. The scales, Libra's eternal symbol, are meant to represent balance, but balance in human lives is rarely perfect. It demands compromise, sacrifice, and sometimes silence. Libras seeking harmony often learn to wear masks, the smile when they are unhappy, the agreeable nod when they disagree, the careful neutrality that keeps everyone else calm while they feel unrest inside. To many, this looks like grace, but to the one living it, it can feel like erasure. Ancient myth already knew this paradox. In Egypt, the scales of Ma'at weighed the heart of the soul against a feather of truth. If the heart was heavy with lies, it would be devoured. For Libra, this archetype still lingers. They long to embody truth and fairness, yet often sacrifice their own truth to maintain the illusion of fairness around them. What is justice if it comes at the cost of your own voice? What is peace if the soul grows heavy with silence? Modern psychology speaks of people-pleasing as a survival strategy born from wounds of rejection and fear of conflict. For Libra, this pattern is often amplified. They become mirrors, reflecting back what others want to see, forgetting the face behind the reflection. Carl Jung warned of the danger of the persona, the mask we wear to meet the world. Too often, Libra confuses the mask with the self, until even they are unsure of where the role ends and the soul begins. Yet within this mask lies both the trap and the potential. The mask protects, it keeps the peace, but it also imprisons. For Libra to awaken, the challenge is not to throw away harmony, but to seek a higher harmony, one that includes their own truth. It is to risk displeasing others in order to stop betraying themselves. The mask of harmony, then, is not Libra's destiny, it is their test, and only by recognizing the mask can they begin to discover the deeper beauty of authenticity. The hidden trap of Libra is not immediately visible. On the surface, their desire to keep peace and maintain harmony looks noble, even selfless. They smooth over disagreements, they listen without judgment, they make others feel seen. But beneath that diplomacy lies a subtle weight. Each time they avoid saying what they truly feel, each time they choose silence over honesty, a piece of themselves grows dimmer. What begins as a gift for others becomes a prison for the self. This trap is indecision, not because Libra cannot see clearly, but because they see too much. They feel the perspectives of others so deeply that every choice becomes a maze of mirrors. If I say this, it will hurt them. If I choose that, it will disrupt the balance. So they hesitate, balancing every possibility until the moment passes. The world calls this indecisiveness, but it is really a consequence of carrying too much, of weighing not only their own truth, but the feelings of everyone around them. The danger is subtle but real. Over time, this habit of hesitation erodes the center of the self. Choices are delayed, desires are postponed, and slowly, the authentic voice of Libra fades beneath the noise of everyone else's needs. Psychologists describe this as self-erasure, a process where the individual becomes invisible even to themselves. What looks like harmony is often exhaustion. The soul stretched thin from trying to hold everyone else's balance while losing their own. Ancient wisdom warned of this very danger. In the myths of Astrea, the goddess of justice who fled the earth, it was said she could no longer bear the corruption of human hearts. She left because balance became impossible. In the same way, Libra risks fleeing from themselves, retreating behind masks, withdrawing into roles, rather than facing the discomfort of conflict. The irony is that in trying to avoid discord, they create the deepest discord of all, the fracture between who they are and who they pretend to be. Yet this trap, once seen, can be broken. It begins by realizing that harmony does not mean sacrificing one's own truth. Real balance is not about pleasing everyone, but about holding steady between honesty and compassion. The hidden trap of Libra is the illusion that peace can exist without truth. To escape it, they must learn to let the scales tip, to allow conflict when necessary, and to trust that authentic presence will create deeper harmony than masks ever could. Long before Libra was drawn in the stars as a symbol of balance, the image of the scales carried sacred meaning in Egypt. The goddess Maat embodied truth, justice, and cosmic order. She was not simply a deity of morality, but the principle by which the entire universe was kept in harmony. In the halls of judgment, it was Maat who held the scales that weighed the heart of the deceased against the feather of truth. If the heart was light, the soul could pass into eternity. If it was heavy, burdened with lies and dishonor, it was devoured by Amit, the eater of the dead. This ancient ritual was not a metaphor in Egyptian thought. It was reality. They believed that every word spoken, every action taken, every silence chosen added weight to the heart. To live by Maat was to live in balance with the divine rhythm of the cosmos. For Libra, this archetype became the foundation of its symbol. The scales are not about superficial fairness. They are about the eternal judgment of the soul against the truth it carried. What is striking is how deeply this myth connects to Libra's hidden struggle. The feather of Maat is not only about honesty with others, it is about honesty with oneself. When Libra silences their truth for the sake of harmony, the heart grows heavy. The mask of diplomacy may please the world, but before the scales of Maat, the question is simple. Did you live in alignment with your truth, or did you betray it? Egyptian cosmology saw the universe itself as balanced upon Maat. Pharaohs were considered guardians of this balance, and to rule unjustly was to endanger cosmic order. In the same way, Libra feels the weight of maintaining balance, not just for themselves, but for everyone around them. This sacred burden can inspire them toward wisdom and fairness, but it can also trap them in endless self-sacrifice. Modern scholars such as Jan Assmann, who studied Egyptian religion, emphasize that Maat was not abstract law, but lived truth, a force both cosmic and personal. For Libra, the lesson is the same. Balance is not avoiding conflict, nor is it bending to please others. It is the courage to live with a heart as light as a feather, aligned with truth even when that truth disrupts appearances. The scales of Ma'at whisper across time that the measure of harmony is not peace without friction, but authenticity without weight. In the night skies of ancient Babylon, the first astronomer priests kept watch over the heavens. They noticed that twice a year the sun stood still in balance. The equinox, when day and night shared equal length. To them, this was no ordinary event. It was the turning of the cosmic scales. The Babylonians, among the earliest to chart the zodiac, placed a marker at this sacred point of balance. What we now call Libra began as a threshold, an eternal reminder that the universe itself moves between light and dark, expansion and contraction, order and chaos. Originally, this region of the sky was not depicted as scales at all. In Mesopotamian star catalogues, such as the Emul Apin texts, it was known as the claws of the scorpion, belonging to Scorpio. Over time, however, the Babylonians separated it, seeing in the equinox a force too important to be hidden within another sign. They transformed the claws into the scales of balance, encoding the equinox as the true midpoint of the zodiac. This was humanity's first attempt to inscribe cosmic symmetry into the heavens. The symbolism was profound. Where the equinox occurred, balance was restored. Light and darkness stood equal, as if the sky itself mirrored the scales of judgment. For Babylonian priests, who believed the heavens governed earthly life, this threshold became a cosmic law. Crops, rituals, and even the calendar were oriented around these points of equal day and night. They understood that life itself depended on the sacred rhythm of balance, and so they elevated Libra as its eternal sign. Modern historians such as Francesca Rochberg, who studied Mesopotamian astrology, point out that Babylonian astronomy was both science and spirituality. Their meticulous records of equinoxes and solstices were not only practical markers of time, but also gateways into divine order. To them, balance was not an abstraction. It was a reality written into the sun's path, one that governed both the sky and the fate of nations. This is where Libra's deeper identity begins, not just as the diplomat or the lover of beauty, but as the threshold keeper, the one who stands at the doorway where opposites meet. The Babylonians understood what we still struggle to grasp, that balance is not static. It is a rhythm, a cycle, a passage between extremes. To be born under Libra is to live at that threshold, feeling both sides, carrying within you the eternal reminder that harmony is not the absence of change, but the grace of standing steady while the cosmos shifts around you. In the myths of Greece, balance was not merely a symbol. It was a goddess. Astrea, the daughter of Themis, embodied innocence, purity, and justice. She walked among mortals during the Golden Age, carrying scales to weigh the truth of human hearts. But as corruption spread, as wars and greed began to darken the world, Astrea could no longer bear the sight. She withdrew from the earth and ascended to the heavens, her scales becoming the constellation of Libra. To the Greeks, her departure marked the end of an age of innocence, a reminder that true justice is fragile, and that when harmony collapses, even the gods retreat. The Romans inherited this myth and added their own layers. For them, Libra was not only the scales of justice, but a cosmic marker tied to their obsession with law and order. It was the balance of contracts, the fairness of treaties, the measurement of value in commerce. Yet at the same time, Libra was ruled by Venus, the goddess of love, beauty, and attraction. This blending created a paradox that still defines Libra today. How can justice remain impartial when beauty is involved? How can fairness stand apart from charm, grace, and desire? To be born under Libra, then, is to carry this double inheritance, the scales of Astrea and the allure of Venus. It is the call to balance truth with love, fairness with aesthetics, justice with diplomacy. But here, too, lies the trap. For the gift of beauty can soften judgment, and the pursuit of harmony can bend justice. Ancient philosophers wrestled with this dilemma. Plato wrote that beauty itself draws the soul toward truth, yet he also warned of its power to deceive. In Libra, these two forces intertwine. The desire to see fairness prevail, and the temptation to maintain appearances, even when truth is uncomfortable. Art and architecture of Greece and Rome reveal this entanglement. The Parthenon, with its perfect proportions, was considered a reflection of divine harmony. Roman courts were adorned with images of balance and symmetry, linking beauty with the law. The message was clear: what is fair must also be beautiful, and what is beautiful must also be fair. But history shows the danger of this union. Justice has often been swayed by appearances, and harmony has been pursued at the cost of truth. For Libra, this mythic inheritance is a burden and a gift. The presence of Venus makes them magnetic, charming, and graceful, yet also tempts them to avoid conflict. The voice of Astrea calls them back to truth, reminding them that beauty without justice is hollow, and justice without beauty can be cruel. Their task is not to abandon either, but to unite them, to make fairness radiant and beauty honest. Only then can the scales find balance. In Hermetic philosophy, balance is not simply a virtue, but a law of the cosmos. The Kybalion, a text attributed to Hermetic teachings, declares the principle of polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has its pair of opposites: hot and cold, light and dark, joy and sorrow. All are degrees of the same essence. The scales, when seen through this lens, become more than a zodiac symbol. They become a mirror of universal truth. To be born under Libra is to live within this polarity, to feel the pull of opposites not as abstractions, but as forces moving through the soul itself. The Hermetic masters taught that balance is never static. Just as the pendulum swings to the left and to the right, life flows in rhythm. The principle of rhythm states that every rise meets a fall, every expansion meets contraction. The scales capture this reality. They tilt, they waver, they seek equilibrium, but never remain frozen in perfect stillness. True balance is dynamic, a constant adjustment, a dance between poles. For Libra, this law explains their gift and their struggle. They are sensitive to shifts in energy, finely attuned to the moods of others, yet often overwhelmed by the task of holding everything in harmony. Sacred geometry reinforces this: proportion, the golden ratio, symmetry. All were seen by Hermetic philosophers as reflections of divine order. To them, beauty was not surface decoration, but the visible signature of truth. The scales symbolize this union of aesthetics and law. What is just is also harmonious, and what is harmonious resonates as beautiful. Modern science, in fact, echoes this. From the spirals of galaxies to the double helix of DNA, balance and proportion are written into the very structure of existence. Yet the danger of polarity is identification with one side. To cling only to light and deny darkness is to fall into illusion. To seek peace while avoiding conflict is to become trapped in imbalance. The Hermetic law teaches that opposites are reconciled not by erasing one, but by holding both. For Libra, this means that conflict is not the enemy of harmony. It is the path to it. Silence does not resolve polarity. Only truth does. The scales of Hermetic wisdom remind us that life is never about escaping duality, but about learning to live within it. Libra's higher calling is not to eliminate extremes, but to embody the still point at the center, where both sides are seen, honored, and brought into proportion. This is the real meaning of balance, not perfection, but presence within the eternal dance of opposites. The gift of Libra has always been their ability to create peace where others see only tension. They can listen without judgment, soften sharp words, and bring warring sides to the same table. This is diplomacy at its highest form, the art of weaving harmony from difference. But like every gift, when overextended, it becomes a shadow. For Libra, this shadow is the archetype of the people pleaser, the soul who bends so far toward keeping the peace that they lose sight of their own center. The people pleaser archetype is deeply human, but in Libra it becomes amplified. Their sensitivity to the emotions of others, almost empathic in nature, makes conflict feel unbearable, so they avoid it, sidestepping confrontation even when their heart is restless. They smooth over disagreements with a smile, change their tone to fit the room, and offer agreement when inside they feel resistance. Over time, the world praises them for being kind, agreeable, and easy to be around. But inside, the cost grows heavier. What the world calls grace is often the silence of self-betrayal. Psychologists have studied this pattern extensively. People-pleasing is often linked to childhood experiences where love felt conditional, where rejection or disapproval carried real pain. To survive, one learns to adapt, to mirror, to anticipate what others want. For Libra, whose archetype is built upon the scales, this survival strategy easily blends with their nature. They become so attuned to the needs of others that their own needs vanish in the process. This creates the illusion of balance, but it is an imbalance at the deepest level. Mythology, too, hints at this trap. Astrea, goddess of justice, left the earth when human corruption grew unbearable. Her withdrawal symbolizes what happens when the pursuit of harmony refuses to face conflict. Justice abandoned the world because truth was too heavy to carry. Libra risks the same withdrawal, retreating behind charm and diplomacy, rather than speaking the words that might disrupt appearances but restore real honesty. The people-pleaser archetype is seductive because it does bring temporary peace. Arguments end, tempers cool, relationships appear stable. But beneath that surface, resentment festers. The soul that never voices its truth becomes restless, anxious, and exhausted. For Libra, the lesson is not to abandon diplomacy, but to transform it. True peacemaking is not avoiding conflict. It is guiding conflict toward resolution. The gift is real, but the trap is equally real. And the only way through is the courage to choose authenticity over approval, truth over temporary calm. Indecision has long been one of the traits most associated with Libra. The image is almost cliché, the scales swinging back and forth, weighing each possibility until the moment to act has passed. Yet this hesitation is not born from weakness, nor from lack of intelligence. In fact, it is often the opposite. Libra sees too much. They perceive every side of a situation, feel the emotions of those involved, anticipate the outcomes of each possible choice. With so many perspectives alive in their awareness, deciding feels less like a step forward and more like betrayal. Betrayal of one option, betrayal of one person, betrayal of one potential harmony. This curse of indecision is tied to Libra's deepest fear, disrupting balance. To them, choice is not neutral. Every decision tilts the scales. What if by acting they create disharmony? What if by speaking truth they disturb peace? The result is hesitation, a life lived in the pause between options, where clarity is always just out of reach. Psychologists describe this as analysis paralysis, the state where overthinking prevents action. For Libra, it is not only mental but spiritual, because their nature is wired to seek equilibrium. To decide feels like breaking the very law they were born to embody. Ancient symbolism mirrors this. In the weighing of the soul in Egyptian myth, even the slightest imbalance determined eternal fate. The scales had to be exact. This archetype lingers in Libra's psyche. The fear of being out of alignment, of tipping the scales too far in one direction, makes every choice feel like a cosmic judgment. This is why Libras may struggle even with small decisions, like where to eat or what to say, because each option carries unseen weight. But the hidden danger of indecision is that it too is a choice. By refusing to act, Libra surrenders their power. Others step in to decide for them, and over time, their own voice fades. What looks like keeping the peace is often self-erasure. The soul loses clarity not because it cannot see, but because it sees so much that it forgets the necessity of movement. The lesson of Libra is that balance is not frozen stillness. It is movement between extremes, like the equinox, like the pendulum. True harmony is not found in endless hesitation, but in the courage to act, knowing that imbalance is not failure, but part of the rhythm of life. Indecision is the curse, but clarity becomes the cure. When Libra chooses with authenticity, the scales do not fall out of balance. They finally settle into truth. The mask is one of Libra's greatest tools and one of their greatest dangers. From an early age, many Libras learn that charm brings safety, that a smile can diffuse tension, that appearing agreeable can smooth over storms. Over time, this mask becomes second nature. It is the pleasant face offered to the world, the gentle voice that says what others want to hear, the careful neutrality that avoids rocking the boat. To outsiders, this looks like grace. But beneath the mask, something quiet and painful is happening. The true self is withering, unseen and unheard. Psychologists often describe this as the danger of the false self, a term introduced by Donald Winnicott. The false self develops to meet the demands of the world, while the true self hides in the background, waiting for a safe place to emerge. For Libra, the mask of harmony becomes that false self. It wins approval, it avoids rejection, but it costs authenticity. Each time Libra hides behind the mask, they feel a little more invisible. They begin to wonder if anyone sees them at all, not the performer, not the diplomat, but the raw, unpolished soul beneath. History and myth echo this theme. In Roman courts, the scales of justice were sometimes depicted blindfolded, suggesting impartiality. Yet blindness can also symbolize the refusal to see what lies beneath appearances. For Libra, the blindfold becomes internal. They pretend balance exists, but inside they feel the tension. They pretend to agree, but inside they hold unspoken truths. Over time, this dissonance creates exhaustion. The soul longs for alignment, but the mask resists because the mask has been rewarded for so long. The cost of this mask is heavy. Relationships become unbalanced because they are built on performance rather than presence. Choices become unclear because the voice of the self is drowned out by the need to please. Even health can suffer. Stress, anxiety, and suppressed emotions often find their way into the body. The irony is that the mask was meant to create peace, but it often creates inner war. Yet the mask also carries the possibility of awakening. The moment Libra dares to remove it, even briefly, they discover that the world does not collapse when they speak their truth. In fact, real harmony often begins there. The cost of masks is high, but the reward of authenticity is greater. For Libra, the challenge is to risk being seen, to let the true self step forward, even if it disrupts appearances. Only then can balance return, not as a performance, but as a living truth. Beneath the grace and diplomacy of Libra often lies a story written long before adulthood. The tendency to please, to adapt, to soften themselves for others rarely appears by chance. It is usually born from wounds, moments where rejection cut deep, where disapproval felt unbearable, where love seemed conditional. For many Libras, people-pleasing begins as survival. A child learns that conflict brings punishment, that saying no risks abandonment, that harmony keeps them safe. Over time, this strategy becomes so ingrained that it follows them into every relationship, long after the danger has passed. Psychologists like Gabor Mate have shown how early trauma shapes patterns of behavior. The nervous system, wired to avoid pain, repeats what once worked. For Libra, this becomes the instinct to seek balance at any cost, even if that cost is their own voice. To disagree feels unsafe. To assert themselves feels like betrayal. So they adapt, mirror, and anticipate the needs of others, convincing themselves that this is kindness. In truth, it is self-protection, a mask built from scars. But the roots of this pattern extend beyond psychology, into the realm of karma. Many traditions speak of the soul carrying lessons across lifetimes. Libra's karmic contract often involves themes of relationship, partnership, and justice. They may incarnate with memories of lifetimes where standing in truth led to exile, or where their voice was silenced by authority. In this life, the soul seeks to relearn balance, to discover how to keep harmony without erasing the self. The rejection wounds of childhood echo older wounds of the spirit, scars carried forward until they are healed. Even astrology points to this. Libra, ruled by Venus, is drawn to connection, beauty, and union. But in the karmic wheel, Libra often struggles with boundaries, learning that love without truth is not love at all. The trauma beneath their diplomacy is not weakness. It is the shadow of lessons not yet mastered. The people-pleaser archetype, when seen through this lens, is not a flaw, but a stage in the soul's growth. The danger is that Libra may never outgrow the strategy, mistaking it for identity. But when awareness dawns, when they realize the mask was born from fear, something shifts. They begin to see that rejection cannot break the soul, that conflict does not end love, and that harmony built on silence is no harmony at all. The scars remain, but they become teachers. What once was survival becomes the path toward authenticity, and the wound itself becomes the doorway to wisdom. Libra has long been called the mirror of the zodiac. Those born under its sign often find that others see in them what they most want to see, or most fear to see. Friends, lovers, even strangers project qualities onto Libra as if they were a screen. Beauty, grace, patience, reliability, or even weakness and indecision. The reason is simple. Libra's natural attunement to others creates a reflective field. They listen, they adjust, they blend their energy so smoothly that others cannot always distinguish between their own reflection and Libra's true essence. This is both a gift and a danger. On one hand, it allows Libra to act as healer mediator, and counselor. They hold up a mirror that helps others see themselves with clarity. On the other hand, it tempts Libra to disappear behind those projections. When everyone else's desires and expectations are reflected back, their own voice grows faint. They begin to wonder, who am I apart from what others see in me? Am I the peacemaker, the beauty, the diplomat, or am I something else entirely? Psychology calls this dynamic projection, the unconscious act of attributing our own traits onto others. Libras, because of their relational sensitivity, become prime recipients of this projection. Jung described the mirror as a necessary part of individuation. We see ourselves in others before we recognize those qualities in ourselves. But if Libra is not careful, they become trapped in playing roles that belong to others' growth, not their own. Myth and symbolism reinforce this idea. In some depictions of Astrea, the goddess of justice associated with Libra, she holds her scales aloft not for herself, but for humanity, weighing their deeds, reflecting their truth, while her own essence remained untouched. In this way, Libra learns that being the mirror does not mean losing their reflection. It means holding the balance without vanishing inside it. The danger comes when Libra forgets that mirrors too need to be cleaned. Over time, projections can cloud the glass, leaving Libra confused about who they are. The path forward is not to reject their gift, but to refine it. A mirror can reveal truth, but it must also reveal its own surface. For Libra, this means claiming their identity apart from others' expectations, speaking with their own voice even if it shatters illusions. Only then can the mirror serve its highest purpose, not as a mask for others, but as a sacred instrument of clarity that reflects both truth and self. The trap of Libra is not confined to individuals. It has seeped into the fabric of society itself. Our modern world, with its obsession over appearances, echoes Libra's shadow on a collective scale. Social media is perhaps the clearest example. Platforms built on images and curated personas reward masks over authenticity. Smiles are staged, lives are edited, and balance is simulated through filters. What appears as harmony is often performance, a digital mask reflecting what others want to see rather than what is true. The collective mirror has become distorted, and in that distortion, we live inside Libra's trap. Politics carries the same signature. Diplomacy, negotiation, and carefully chosen words are meant to create peace, but too often they conceal deeper fractures. Leaders project unity while divisions grow sharper beneath the surface. Agreements are signed in public while betrayals are plotted in private. Like the shadow side of Libra, politics values appearance of balance over the courage of truth. Justice itself, symbolized by the scales, is vulnerable to manipulation. Courts claim impartiality, yet outcomes are swayed by wealth, influence, and image. The mask of harmony disguises the imbalance beneath. Culture at large reinforces this. We are taught to smile at work, to avoid conflict in conversation, to keep opinions polite. The unwritten rule is clear: keep things smooth, even if it means burying what you really feel. This collective conditioning mirrors Libra's survival strategy: harmony at all costs, even when the cost is honesty. Psychologists like Erich Fromm warned of this long ago, describing a society where conformity replaces authenticity, where the approval of others is valued more than the truth of the self. Yet beneath this collective mask, the same exhaustion that Libra feels begins to spread. A culture built on performance eventually cracks under the weight of unspoken truths. Social media users confess burnout from constant curation. Political systems collapse under hypocrisy. Communities fracture because politeness replaced real dialogue. The Libra trap, when scaled to the world, reveals its unsustainability. Harmony without truth is not balance, it is deception. But within this trap lies an invitation. Just as the individual Libra must learn to risk conflict to find authenticity, so too must society. Real peace will not come from perfect images, but from raw honesty. Real justice will not come from the performance of balance, but from courage to tip the scales toward truth. The world is caught in Libra's shadow, but it is also poised to awaken from it. And that awakening begins when masks fall, both personal and collective. From childhood, most of us are taught that politeness is a virtue. We are told to smile even when we don't feel like it, to say thank you even when gratitude isn't in our hearts, to nod in agreement when silence feels safer than honesty. On the surface, these lessons create a smooth society. Politeness keeps order, avoids conflict, and keeps everyone comfortable. But beneath this conditioning lies a deeper cost. Politeness becomes compliance, and compliance over time becomes the enemy of truth. For Libra, this theme runs especially deep. Their natural sensitivity to others' emotions means they often learn early that politeness keeps the peace. A harsh word disrupts balance, but a gentle word restores it. Yet this survival skill, praised by society, slowly transforms into a cage. The tower of politeness rises brick by brick, built from every moment where truth is swallowed to avoid discomfort. What looks like harmony is really silence stacked upon silence, until the tower blocks the light of authenticity. Civilizations have long valued conformity. From ancient empires to modern democracies, laws and customs are designed to keep people predictable, orderly, and polite. But truth is rarely polite. It disrupts, it confronts, it challenges what is false. This is why prophets and truth-tellers throughout history were often condemned. They shattered the illusion of harmony, exposing the cracks in the tower. In today's world, this pattern continues. Social and professional settings reward those who play along, who say the right words, who never rock the boat. But the cost is authenticity, and the soul feels it. Psychologist Rollo May warned that the repression of authentic expression creates anxiety and disconnection. When truth is buried under layers of politeness, relationships lose depth, communities lose trust, and individuals lose themselves. Libra, caught in this collective tower, often becomes the silent pillar holding it up. They smile while inside they ache. They nod while their heart whispers, no. The world praises them for being agreeable, while their soul longs for liberation. Yet towers eventually fall. History shows that revolutions often begin with voices that refuse to remain polite in the face of injustice. The illusion of harmony shatters, and truth breaks through. For Libra, this is the path forward, to realize that politeness without honesty is not kindness, but complicity. To learn that true balance comes not from swallowing truth, but from speaking it with compassion. When the tower of politeness crumbles, what remains is not chaos, it is freedom and the possibility of harmony that is real. The image of the scales is perhaps nowhere more visible today than in the justice system. Courthouses across the world display the symbol of Lady Justice, blindfolded and holding a balance. It is meant to suggest fairness, impartiality, and equality before the law. This is Libra's archetype carved in stone. The promise that truth can be weighed, measured, and judged without bias. Yet in practice, the justice system often reflects not the purity of Libra's vision, but its distortion. What was meant to embody harmony too often becomes an instrument of control. The blindfold on Lady Justice was meant to symbolize impartiality, but in reality, it sometimes masks willful ignorance. Courts claim to be neutral, but wealth, influence, and power frequently tip the scales. Sociologists like Michelle Alexander, in her work The New Jim Crow, show how systemic biases create outcomes that disproportionately punish the poor and marginalized. The scales, far from balanced, lean toward those who already hold privilege. This is the shadow side of Libra's archetype, the performance of balance without its reality. The deeper issue lies in the very idea of measuring truth through rigid systems. Ancient Egypt's Ma'at weighed the heart not against a law code, but against truth itself. Justice was cosmic, personal, and spiritual. Modern legal systems, by contrast, often confuse legality with morality. What is lawful is not always just. Slavery was legal. Segregation was legal. Even today, laws can be manipulated to protect the powerful while silencing the vulnerable. Libra's scales become a prop, their symbolism emptied of spirit. And yet, the dream of balance persists. Courts still inspire reverence because people hunger for fairness. The ideal of Libra, harmony, justice, proportion, still stirs something in the collective soul. This is why injustice provokes outrage. We feel instinctively when the scales have been tipped, when appearances of balance hide corruption beneath. For Libra individuals, this symbolism resonates deeply. They sense the pain of unfairness on a personal level, often becoming advocates, mediators, or healers who try to restore equilibrium. But the lesson is sobering. Justice is not guaranteed by systems or symbols. It must be lived, chosen, and defended. The distortion of justice teaches Libra the same lesson life always offers them. Appearances are not enough. Harmony without truth is a lie, and balance without authenticity is an illusion. The scales of justice will only fulfill their meaning when they weigh not masks, not power, not image, but the true heart of human integrity. Libra stands at a precise point in the zodiac wheel, the seventh sign. This placement is not arbitrary. In the language of number, 7 has always carried profound spiritual weight. Across traditions, it appears as a sacred rhythm. The 7 days of creation in Genesis, the 7 heavens of Islam, the 7 chakras in Hindu philosophy, the 7 gates in Sumerian myth. To ancient mystics, 7 was the number of testing, of reflection, of the soul's encounter with shadow. And for Libra, this resonance shapes its entire archetype. The first 6 signs of the zodiac are often seen as personal, dealing with survival, identity, and inner development. But at the 7th, the soul turns outward. Libra marks the threshold where I meets we. It is the beginning of partnership, justice, and relationship. The number 7 here functions as a mirror. At this stage, the soul cannot move forward without seeing itself reflected in the other. And it is in that reflection that shadow arises. Mystics such as Pythagoras taught that numbers were archetypes, divine principles shaping reality. 7 was considered both sacred and dangerous. It is a prime number, indivisible, representing the search for unity in a fractured world. In Kabbalistic tradition, 7 corresponds to Netzach, the sphere of endurance, victory, and also illusion. It is the testing ground of desire and beauty, much like Libra ruled by Venus. Here, the soul must discern between harmony that is authentic and harmony that is false. The symbolism repeats across cultures. The 7 days of the week culminate in rest, a pause for reflection. Pilgrims circle the Kaaba 7 times, seeking spiritual balance. Buddhists speak of 7 factors of awakening. Each echoes the idea that 7 is a point of trial, a passage where the soul is weighed and must choose truth. Libra, as the 7th sign, embodies this trial not in theory, but in lived experience. Every relationship, every choice of fairness, every struggle between pleasing others and honoring the self is part of this spiritual test. Modern numerologists describe 7 as the vibration of seekers, philosophers, and those drawn to hidden truths. For Libra, this manifests as a constant search for clarity, but also the temptation to remain in reflection without action. 7 mirrors everything, yet offers no resolution until the soul dares to step through shadow. Thus, Libra's placement as the 7th sign is not coincidence. It encodes its destiny as the threshold of testing. To live as Libra is to face the challenge of 7, to look into mirrors, to endure the shadow, and to emerge not as an illusion of harmony, but as a truth refined by trial. Every sign of the zodiac finds its meaning in relation to its opposite, and Libra's mirror is Aries. Where Aries shouts, "I am," Libra whispers, "We are." Aries charges forward with independence, seeking conquest and identity through action. Libra pauses, weighing the impact on others, seeking connection through balance. The 2 signs form an axis, a cosmic polarity between self and other, war and peace, independence and compromise. To understand Libra fully, one must look across the wheel into the fiery eyes of Aries. Aries represents the warrior, the pioneer, the force of will that says yes to conflict if it means authenticity. Libra represents the diplomat, the peacemaker, the one who seeks resolution rather than victory. One fights for the self, the other negotiates for the collective. Both archetypes are essential. Without Aries, the self dissolves into the expectations of others. Without Libra, the self becomes tyrannical, blind to the needs of the community. The tension between them is not a flaw, but a necessary balance, a reminder that the soul must hold both autonomy and union. Astrologers often note that oppositions in the chart create projection. Libra may encounter Aries-like people who force them to confront what they avoid. Anger, assertion, independence. Aries may find themselves drawn to Libra-like figures who temper their fire with diplomacy. Each sees in the other what they lack, and through conflict or attraction, both are challenged to integrate the opposite pole. History echoes this axis. Wars end not only through the sword of Aries, but through the treaty of Libra. Revolutions are born in Aries' fire, but sustained through Libra's dialogue. Even mythology reflects this dance. Ares, the god of war, embodies raw aggression, while Aphrodite, goddess of love and ruler of Libra, brings harmony and attraction. Their union was both passionate and turbulent, a reminder that love and conflict are often intertwined. For Libra individuals, the lesson of Aries is courage. The courage to risk displeasing others, the courage to act without waiting for every perspective to align. For Aries, the lesson of Libra is compassion. The ability to pause and recognize that victory without relationship is hollow. Together, they form one teaching. Harmony is not the absence of struggle, but the integration of opposites. In the axis of Libra and Aries, the soul learns that neither self nor other can be denied. Real peace is not surrender, nor is it domination. It is the meeting point where fire and air converge, where the sword and the scales finally stand side by side. Libra has always been tied to the realm of partnership, but beneath the surface of ordinary relationships lies something deeper. The idea of karmic contracts. In many spiritual traditions, it is believed that souls choose the bonds they will enter before incarnation. Birth under Libra often signals that these contracts will revolve around balance, justice, and the lessons of union. Marriage, partnership, even business alliances become sacred classrooms, where Libra must learn not just how to please or to compromise, but how to honor both self and other without tipping into illusion. Astrology itself encodes this truth. Libra rules the 7th house, the house of marriage, contracts, and legal unions. Unlike the fiery self-assertion of Aries, its opposite, Libra's domain is about shared agreements. But agreements are not always equal. Many Libras find themselves entangled in relationships where the cost of harmony is silence. They may unconsciously attract partners who mirror their shadow, forcing them to confront patterns of self-erasure, codependence, or avoidance of conflict. These relationships are not accidents. They are soul agreements designed to awaken. Karmic contracts often appear in the form of repeating dynamics. A Libra may find themselves leaving one unbalanced relationship only to step into another that feels strikingly similar. From a karmic perspective, this is the soul's way of saying, the lesson has not yet been learned. You cannot escape the contract until you face it. Modern spiritual teachers, such as Caroline Myss, speak of sacred contracts as blueprints chosen by the soul, assignments that ensure growth. For Libra, these assignments frequently involve the courage to claim identity within union, to discover harmony that does not require disappearance. Marriage becomes a particularly potent arena. Across history, unions were not always about love, but about balance of power, property, and alliances, echoes of Libra's scales. Even today, Libras often feel the weight of maintaining equilibrium in their partnerships, sometimes carrying more of the burden than their share. But hidden within this imbalance is the opportunity to break the cycle. By choosing partners, friends, and collaborators who honor authenticity rather than masks, Libra fulfills the true purpose of their contracts. The karmic path of Libra is not to dissolve into the other, nor to retreat into isolation. It is to walk the delicate line between. Their soul contracts exist not as punishments, but as agreements of growth. When they learn to hold both truth and love, both self and union, the karmic contract transforms. What once felt like a binding agreement becomes liberation. The realization that balance is not found by losing oneself in another, but by standing together, whole, in the light of shared truth. Venus rules Libra, and through her influence, this sign inherits a deep connection to beauty, attraction, and relationship. But unlike Venus in Taurus, where the energy grounds itself in earth, sensuality, and stability, Venus in Libra expresses through air. It is refined, intellectual, and relational. This difference is key to understanding Libra's nature. Beauty here is not just physical, it is social. It lives in the grace of words, the elegance of gestures, the symmetry of art and thought. Libra radiates charm, a magnetism that seems effortless. Yet behind this ease often lies a tender vulnerability that few ever see. The air element makes Libra light, adaptable, and quick to read the moods of others. They are skilled in conversation, able to shift tone and language to create comfort. This adaptability is part of their power, but it is also their shield. When Venus expresses through air, love becomes entangled with perception. Libras care deeply about how they are seen, how they are received, how they reflect in the eyes of others. Their charm is not only a gift, but also a mask, a way of hiding the fear that if they showed their raw self, the balance would shatter. Astrologers like Stephen Arroyo have noted that Venus in Libra seeks harmony above all else. Yet this pursuit can become so consuming that conflict feels unbearable. The result is a kind of aesthetic armor. Grace, poise, and charm become defenses against rejection. Vulnerability is concealed beneath smiles and compliments, beneath carefully chosen words. To the outside world, Libra appears confident and magnetic. Inside, they may wrestle with self-doubt, with the fear of not being enough, with the quiet question of whether anyone truly sees past the charm. This duality is not weakness but depth. It reveals the paradox of Venus in air, love expressed through intellect, beauty offered as diplomacy, connection sought through grace. But true intimacy requires more than surface harmony. It requires the courage to let the mask fall, to allow vulnerability to be witnessed. For Libra, this is the path of growth, learning that their worth is not tied to perfection or performance, but to authenticity. Venus in Libra teaches that charm can open doors, but only truth keeps them open. The airy elegance of this placement gives the gift of attracting love, beauty, and friendship. Yet its deeper purpose is to lead Libra beyond the mask, to discover that vulnerability itself is the most magnetic force of all. Across the universe, balance reveals itself not as stillness, but as proportion. The ancients who gave Libra its scales intuited something profound. Harmony is woven into the very fabric of existence. In sacred geometry, the golden ratio appears again and again, in seashells, sunflower spirals, and even the proportions of the Parthenon. Mathematicians from Euclid to Fibonacci noted that this ratio creates forms both beautiful and stable, reflecting a cosmic order that transcends culture. For Libra, this truth echoes through their symbol. Balance is not neutrality or compromise. It is the precise alignment of parts that allows the whole to sing. Astronomy offers the same lesson. Galaxies spiral with near-perfect symmetry, stars orbit in rhythmic balance, and our own planet maintains life through the fine-tuned equilibrium of distance from the Sun. Physicists refer to this as the fine-tuning problem. The constants of nature are so precise that even the smallest shift would make life impossible. To the mystic, this is no accident, but evidence of cosmic proportion. The scales of Libra mirror these vast patterns, reminding us that true balance is not passive. It is actively maintained by laws both visible and hidden. Even in human creations, proportion carries power. The music of Pythagoras was built on mathematical harmony, showing that intervals pleasing to the ear correspond to simple ratios. Architecture across cultures use symmetry to reflect the divine, from Egyptian pyramids to Gothic cathedrals. Balance here is not about erasing extremes, but about integrating them into a design where each part supports the whole. For Libra individuals, the danger is to confuse balance with avoidance. Neutrality, silence, or endless compromise may look like harmony, but they lack proportion. Real balance requires weight. The scales cannot function without both sides present. This is why Libra's growth comes from embracing polarity rather than erasing it, allowing both truth and compassion, both shadow and light, to rest on the scale until proportion is found. The cosmic scale whispers that balance is not fragile. It is the deepest strength of the universe. It is what holds galaxies together, what allows music to move the heart, what enables truth and love to coexist. For Libra, the task is to remember that harmony does not come from denying extremes, but from daring to hold them in sacred proportion, a reflection of the very order that keeps the stars from falling. Breaking free from Libra's trap requires courage, the courage to risk conflict in order to speak truth. For those born under this sign, silence often feels safer. It maintains appearances, avoids discomfort, and keeps relationships intact on the surface. But beneath that quiet, tension builds. Suppressed emotions, unspoken needs, and hidden resentments accumulate until the heart grows heavy. The irony is clear. In trying to preserve harmony, Libra often destroys it from within. True liberation begins the moment they dare to let go of the mask, to risk disharmony in order to honor authenticity. Conflict is not the enemy. Across psychology and even in spiritual traditions, conflict is recognized as a catalyst for growth. Carl Jung described individuation as the process of confronting and integrating the shadow, a task that always generates friction. In Buddhism, the middle way is not the avoidance of extremes, but the balance that arises through wrestling with them. For Libra, this means that disagreement, tension, and discomfort are not failures. They are the gateways to deeper harmony. In everyday life, this looks like small acts of courage, saying no when it feels impossible, expressing an unpopular opinion without softening it into invisibility, allowing anger to surface rather than smoothing it away. Each act may cause ripples, but those ripples are necessary to clear the stagnant waters of false peace. Social researcher Brené Brown writes that clear is kind, unclear is unkind. For Libra, clarity often feels unkind, but in truth, it is the deepest kindness to themselves and to others. History shows the same lesson. Justice has never advanced without disruption. Peace has never been real without truth. Whether in civil rights, in spiritual reformations, or in personal relationships, harmony has always come through those willing to risk conflict for integrity. Libra's liberation is found in the same path. The scales tip not because balance is lost, but because they are finally allowed to move. To break the trap is to realize that truth itself creates balance. Speaking it may cause storms, but storms clear the air. In risking conflict, Libra finds that peace built on truth is far stronger than the fragile calm of avoidance. This is not the end of harmony. It is its beginning. A harmony rooted not in masks, but in the courage of the soul. The journey from pleaser to peacemaker is one of Libra's greatest transformations. At first, the instinct to keep others happy feels like kindness. They smile to smooth tension, agree to avoid arguments, sacrifice their own needs so that harmony appears unbroken. The world rewards them for this performance. They are called graceful, charming, easy to love. But deep inside, a quiet ache grows. Pleasing is not the same as peace. Performance is not the same as presence. Sooner or later, the mask becomes too heavy to wear. The turning point comes when Libra realizes that real harmony cannot exist without truth. Peace created through silence is fragile. It shatters at the first sign of conflict. But peace rooted in authenticity can endure storms. Psychology affirms this. Relationships built on suppression may survive on the surface, but they corrode over time. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability shows that trust and connection only grow when honesty is present. For Libra, this means daring to let go of the role of the pleaser, even if it risks displeasing others. The transformation is subtle but profound. Instead of saying yes out of fear, they learn to say yes from choice. Instead of softening their voice to fit the room, they let their voice ring clear, even if it disrupts the mood. Instead of chasing approval, they begin to value alignment with their own truth. This is where Libra's gift shines in its highest form. They move from performance to presence, from bending to balance, from pleasing to peacemaking. The archetype of the peacemaker is different. A pleaser avoids conflict. A peacemaker engages with it, guiding it toward resolution. A pleaser hides their feelings. A peacemaker speaks with compassion. A pleaser seeks approval. A peacemaker seeks understanding. For Libra, this shift is liberation. The scales no longer tilt endlessly in others' favor. They finally settle in sacred proportion, holding both self and other with equal weight. Ancient wisdom mirrors this transformation. In Buddhism, peace is not the absence of conflict, but the cessation of illusion. In Hermetic thought, balance is achieved not by denying opposites, but by reconciling them. Libra embodies these truths when they step into their role as authentic peacemakers. They are no longer mirrors of what others want to see. They become mirrors of truth itself, reflecting harmony that does not break under pressure. From pleaser to peacemaker, Libra discovers that their deepest gift is not charm, but clarity, not avoidance, but courage. And in that courage, they find the balance they were searching for all along. True balance does not exist without conflict. This is a truth that Libra often resists, yet it lies at the heart of their spiritual work. The scales are not fixed in eternal stillness. They move, they tilt, they adjust. That movement is friction, and without it, balance cannot be found. To deny conflict is to deny the very process that creates harmony. Yet Libra, longing for peace, often avoids this truth. They choose silence instead of disagreement, compliance instead of confrontation. But what they avoid is precisely what would bring them closer to the wholeness they seek. Ancient traditions recognize the sacred role of conflict. In Taoist philosophy, yin and yang are not enemies, but partners. Darkness and light swirl together, creating the eternal flow of the Tao. In Jungian psychology, individuation requires shadow integration, the willingness to face the repressed, the uncomfortable, the hidden parts of the self. Without this confrontation, no real growth is possible. For Libra, sacred conflict is the same. It is the courage to let tension rise, to hold space for friction, to allow opposing forces to meet without running from them. In relationships, this means honesty. A union without disagreement is not a sign of harmony, but of suppression. Real intimacy requires the risk of conflict, because only then can both sides be seen. For Libra, the challenge is to realize that conflict does not destroy love, avoidance does. By bringing shadow into the open, they create the possibility of a peace that is authentic, not artificial. Even in the cosmos, conflict is sacred. Stars are born from the collapse of matter. Galaxies form through collisions. And life on Earth thrives through the balance of destruction and renewal. Friction is not failure. It is creation. Libra's soul resonates with this universal law, though in their human form they may resist it. Their lesson is to embrace the storm, to see conflict not as chaos, but as the sacred rhythm of integration. When Libra allows sacred conflict, something shifts. The scales are no longer forced to stay level at any cost. They move, they wobble, they respond to weight. And in that motion, they find true balance. By integrating shadow, Libra discovers that harmony is not the absence of friction, but the presence of wholeness. Conflict becomes sacred because it is the fire that reveals truth. And in that truth, balance is finally real. Libra's struggle between masks and truth is not only personal, it is collective. As humanity moves into the Aquarian age, the illusion of false balance is unraveling. For centuries, civilizations have built harmony on appearances, political systems that project fairness while hiding corruption, cultures that value politeness over honesty, relationships sustained more by compromise than by truth. This is Libra's shadow magnified through society. But the Aquarian age, with its vibration of awakening, innovation, and transparency, refuses to sustain illusions. What was once hidden behind the mask of balance is now being exposed. The Aquarian age is associated with revelation. Information moves at the speed of light. Truths that were once buried are shared across the globe in moments. Social media, whistleblowers, and collective movements bring shadows into the open. While this creates disruption and chaos, it also tears down false harmony. Libra's archetype, once content to preserve appearances, is being called to evolve. It is no longer enough to keep peace through silence. The age demands truth, even if it disrupts balance in the short term. Astrologers like Dane Rudhyar have noted that Aquarius represents the breaking of old forms to create new patterns of collective consciousness. For Libra, this means that the old strategy of avoiding conflict no longer works. Agreements built on masks collapse. Diplomacy without honesty crumbles. What emerges instead is a new kind of balance, one rooted in authenticity. This is why so many people today feel the strain of living double lives, curating perfect images online while yearning for raw honesty offline. The collective is living through Libra's test. The illusion of balance is falling apart because humanity is learning that peace cannot be built on lies. Injustice disguised as order is being challenged. Hierarchies hidden behind civility are being exposed. The Aquarian age is forcing the scales to move, showing us that real equilibrium is found only through transparency. For Libra individuals, this collective energy can feel both threatening and liberating. It demands they step into their higher role, not as pleasers, but as peacemakers who embody truth. As the Aquarian age deepens, Libra's archetype will no longer be the mask of harmony, but the guide toward authentic balance. Their gift will be to show that peace is not the absence of disruption, but the courage to face disruption until truth and justice can emerge. The false balance collapses so that real balance may rise, and Libra, if they embrace this shift, becomes the bridge between illusion and awakening. The true gift of Libra has never been avoidance. It has always been discernment. While the shadow of this sign hesitates endlessly, weighing every perspective until clarity seems impossible, the higher calling of Libra is to see with precision, to recognize truth from illusion, to distinguish harmony from performance, to cut through the masks and recognize what is real. This is why the scales are such a potent symbol. Not because they avoid tipping, but because they reveal where weight truly belongs. Discernment is different from judgment. Judgment condemns, but discernment clarifies. It is the inner ability to perceive subtle differences, to understand when balance is authentic and when it is false. In spiritual traditions, discernment has always been considered a gift of the wise. In Christian mysticism, it is called discernment of spirits, the ability to sense what is of truth and what is deception. In Eastern traditions, the Sanskrit word viveka describes the same power, the capacity to separate the real from the unreal, the eternal from the temporary. Libra, when awakened, embodies this gift in every choice they make. Modern psychology also reflects this truth. Carl Rogers emphasized the importance of congruence, the alignment of inner truth with outer expression. For Libra, discernment means recognizing when they are out of congruence, when they are agreeing for comfort rather than authenticity. It is the pause not to avoid choice, but to refine it, to ensure that what they choose aligns with who they are. In relationships, this gift becomes even more powerful. Libra's sensitivity allows them to read between the lines, to perceive tensions others ignore. When guided by discernment rather than fear, they can bring clarity where confusion reigns. They can show others the difference between compromise that honors both parties and compromise that erases one side entirely. But discernment requires courage. It means Libra cannot hide behind endless indecision. They must trust their perception, risk the displeasure of others, and stand by what they see as true. This is the transformation, from the one who fears choice to the one who brings clarity through choice. The higher calling of Libra is not to avoid the burden of the scales, but to master them, to weigh truth against illusion, to weigh masks against authenticity, to weigh silence against honesty. When they embrace discernment, Libra ceases to be a pleaser and becomes a guide, not avoiding decisions, but illuminating the path that leads to balance that is real, lasting, and sacred. The final revelation of Libra's path is found in beauty, not the surface beauty of polished appearances, but the deeper beauty of proportion. Across cultures, proportion has always been seen as the language of harmony. The golden ratio found in spirals of seashells, the symmetry of a flower's petals, the resonance of musical intervals. All of these reveal that balance is not random but sacred. Libra, as guardian of the scales, carries this gift within the soul. They are not merely seekers of peace. They are keepers of proportion, the subtle guardians of symmetry in life, art, and relationship. In art, proportion creates impact. The Parthenon of Athens, constructed with exact mathematical ratios, still stirs awe thousands of years later because its balance reflects the eternal. In music, the octave divides sound into precise intervals that the human ear recognizes as harmonious. Pythagoras taught that music was the audible expression of cosmic mathematics, the harmony of the spheres. Libra resonates with this truth instinctively. They are drawn to beauty not out of vanity, but because beauty is the reflection of hidden order, the proof that the soul and the cosmos are woven by the same laws. In human relationships, proportion takes the form of fairness. Each person is seen, heard, and valued without one side overpowering the other. This is why Libra feels imbalanced so sharply. It is not only emotional discomfort, it is a disruption of sacred proportion. They long for symmetry between giving and receiving, between speaking and listening, between truth and compassion. Their challenge is to maintain that proportion without slipping into avoidance or masks. When they succeed, their presence becomes healing because they remind others of the possibility of harmony that is real. The beauty of proportion extends into the spiritual life. Mystics across traditions speak of the balance between body and spirit, mind and heart, action and contemplation. Libra's journey is to embody this balance, to live as the meeting point where opposites find union. They are not meant to erase conflict, but to reveal the deeper symmetry beneath it. The way shadow enhances light, the way silence deepens sound, the way stillness gives meaning to motion. In this closing revelation, Libra is seen not as the pleaser nor the mask bearer, but as the guardian of proportion itself. Their gift is not neutrality but harmony, not avoidance but presence. When they embody this truth, they reflect the same beauty written into galaxies and seashells, music and temples. They become a living reminder that balance is not absence, but the radiant symmetry of the soul in alignment with the cosmos. In the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead, the soul's fate was decided in the Hall of Maat. The heart of the deceased was placed on one side of the scale, and on the other, the feather of Maat, the symbol of truth, justice, and cosmic balance. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul was free to continue its journey. If it was heavier, burdened by lies, guilt, and hidden shadows, it was devoured by Amit, the devourer of the unworthy. This was not merely mythology to the Egyptians. It was the very rhythm of existence, a reminder that every action, every silence, every deception left a weight on the heart. For Libra, this image is the essence of their archetype. Their scales are not merely about politeness, compromise, or appearance. They are about the soul's truth. Every time Libra chooses masks over authenticity, the heart grows heavier. Every time they avoid conflict at the cost of honesty, the weight increases. The mask may please the world, but before the scales of Ma'at, there is no performance. Only truth remains. The feather is a powerful symbol. It is delicate, weightless, almost fragile, yet it carries the strength to decide eternity. The Egyptians believed this was because truth itself is light. Lies, pretenses, and illusions weigh the heart down, but living in alignment with Ma'at brings clarity and freedom. For Libra, this sacred image is both a warning and an invitation. Their task is not to create artificial harmony, but to live with a heart so aligned that when weighed, it does not sink. Modern psychology echoes this in its own language. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as becoming whole, integrating both shadow and light. Suppressing truth makes the psyche heavy, while embracing authenticity allows energy to flow freely. Spiritual traditions across the world repeat this message. In Buddhism, liberation comes when clinging ceases. In Christianity, the pure of heart see God. In Hermeticism, balance is achieved only when both sides of polarity are acknowledged. The scales of the heart remind Libra that their life is not judged by how many conflicts they avoided, but by how true they remain to themselves and others. The real harmony is not measured in smiles or masks, but in whether the heart can stand weightless against the feather of truth. To live in this way is to embody Ma'at, to walk through life carrying not the burden of appearances, but the freedom of a soul aligned with eternal balance. Libra's karmic work is not to perfect the mask, but to remove it. Throughout their lives, they are tested with the same choice again and again: to keep the peace by hiding, or to risk disruption by telling the truth. On the surface, the safer path always seems to be performance. Smiles win approval. Silence avoids conflict. Charm secures connection. But karmically, each time Libra chooses approval over authenticity, the scales tip further out of balance. The lesson returns in cycles until it can no longer be ignored. Astrologically, Libra belongs to the cardinal signs, the initiators, the ones who begin seasons. This reveals something important. Libra is not here simply to reflect, but to act. Their rulership by Venus may tempt them into seeking beauty and grace above all, but their deeper task is to wield those gifts in service of truth. Their soul contracts often place them in roles where they are surrounded by expectation. Family, partners, communities that reward them for pleasing. Yet the karmic work demands something else: to break the cycle of masks and step into alignment with the feather of Ma'at, where only truth is weightless enough to pass. Spiritual teachers remind us that authenticity is not always comfortable. Krishnamurti once said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." Libra feels this more than most. To speak truth when everyone else wants silence, to disrupt false harmony when the world demands politeness, is to fulfill their karmic role. Each time they resist the pull of performance, they strengthen the soul. Each time they choose authenticity, even trembling, they realign with the deeper balance their sign was born to embody. In relationships, this often means saying the hard thing, not with cruelty, but with clarity. It means learning that love is not lost when truth is spoken. It means realizing that peace kept through lies is never real peace at all. Karmically, Libra is here to learn that conflict is not failure, but the crucible where true harmony is forged. The shadow of Libra whispers, if you reveal yourself, you will lose love. The soul of Libra replies, if I do not reveal myself, I will lose myself. This is the karmic work, to shift from pleasing to peacemaking, from performance to presence, from approval to authenticity. When Libra makes that choice, the scale steady, the heart lightens, and the soul begins to fulfill its promise of true balance. The way out of Libra's trap is not found in endless compromise, nor in performing harmony for others. It begins when Libra dares to stand in the center of their own being. Real balance does not come from pleasing everyone around them. It comes from alignment within. When the soul is centered, the scales steady themselves, regardless of how the outside world tilts. This is the truth Libra must learn. Harmony cannot be maintained if it costs authenticity. So much of Libra's shadow is rooted in the belief that peace depends on others' approval. They hesitate, they mirror, they adjust, hoping to avoid disapproval or conflict. But this effort to keep everyone satisfied is a trap with no exit, because human desires are endless and often contradictory. The more Libra tries to keep all sides happy, the more they lose themselves. The only way out is to release the need for external validation and return to the still point within. Philosophers and mystics across cultures have described this still point. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks of equanimity as the highest state, acting without attachment to praise or blame. In Buddhism, balance is found not by controlling the world, but by mastering the mind. Even in Hermetic thought, the scales represent proportion, not performance. Libra's higher lesson echoes these teachings. Balance is not about external approval, but about standing in truth, even when it disrupts the surface calm. Psychology confirms this spiritual truth. Carl Rogers wrote about congruence, the alignment between inner experience and outer expression. When people live in congruence, they are healthier, more resilient, and more at peace. For Libra, congruence means daring to let their inside match their outside, even if it risks conflict. It means choosing authenticity over appeasement. The way out is not easy. It requires courage to face disapproval, strength to endure conflict, and trust that truth will bring deeper harmony in time. But once Libra learns to stand in their center, they discover that balance does not shatter when it is rooted in authenticity. It becomes stronger, steadier, and unshakable. Real harmony emerges not when everyone is pleased, but when the soul is aligned with itself. And from that place of truth, Libra becomes not a pleaser, but a guide, showing the world that balance is not performance, but presence. The journey of Libra is not about choosing one side of the scale over the other. It is about learning to hold both shadow and light without fear. The shadow of Libra is clear: indecision, masks, people-pleasing, the endless chase for approval. The light of Libra is equally clear: beauty, grace, justice, the gift of seeing every perspective. But wholeness comes when these two are no longer at war. The final balance is not perfection, it is integration. Jungian psychology describes individuation as the process of uniting conscious and unconscious, light and shadow. For Libra, This means recognizing that their tendency to avoid conflict is not a flaw to erase, but a signal, pointing them toward the deeper work of truth. Their gift for harmony is not diminished by acknowledging their avoidance, it is strengthened. By integrating both sides, Libra moves beyond performance into authenticity. They become whole, no longer fragmented between the face they show and the self they hide. This integration is mirrored in spiritual traditions across the world. Taoist philosophy reminds us that yin and yang are never separate. Darkness contains light. Light contains darkness. The balance is alive, not static. Egyptian Ma'at measured not perfection but truth. A heart aligned with what is real, even if scarred. In Christian mysticism, the peace that surpasses understanding comes not from avoiding trials but from walking through them with faith. Libra's scales embody these truths. Balance is not about escaping extremes, but about living in the rhythm between them. Practically, this means that Libra learns to risk being disliked in order to be genuine. They accept that conflict will sometimes come, but they no longer run from it. They honor their desire for harmony without silencing their own needs. They understand that charm is beautiful, but truth is sacred. In this final balance, the masks fall away, and what remains is a soul that reflects not just what others want to see, but what is authentically there. When Libra integrates shadow and light, they become what they were always meant to be. Not just a diplomat or a pleaser, but a keeper of sacred proportion. Their presence becomes healing because it is real. Their balance becomes unshakable because it is rooted in wholeness. And in this wholeness, Libra fulfills their true destiny, not to perform harmony, but to embody it as a living mirror of the universe itself. The hidden trap of Libra has always been their longing for harmony at any cost. In the beginning, this manifests as masks, as endless compromises, as a life lived in reflection of others, rather than in alignment with the self. Yet what begins as a trap becomes, through struggle, their path to liberation. For it is only by facing this shadow, by admitting that false peace is no peace at all, that Libra discovers the sacred power they were born to embody. The scales are not meant to remain perfectly still. They are meant to weigh truth against illusion, light against shadow, self against other. And in that weighing, balance becomes alive. When Libra chooses authenticity over performance, something shifts. The fear of conflict begins to dissolve, replaced by the understanding that real harmony requires truth. Masks fall, and relationships once built on pleasing become rooted in presence. The courage to risk disapproval opens the doorway to deeper love. The hesitation that once paralyzed them becomes clarity, a clear vision of proportion that sees what belongs and what does not. In this transformation, the scales of Libra are no longer a symbol of performance, but of liberation. Proof that the soul can stand in balance by living in truth. Spiritual traditions affirm this. In Ma'at's weighing of the heart, only truth allowed the soul to pass freely. In Taoism, balance was found not by avoiding opposites, but by holding them together in flow. In Hermetic law, polarity was not a curse but the foundation of creation itself. Libra embodies all these teachings. Their liberation is not in erasing duality, but in reconciling it, in showing that peace does not mean silence, but alignment. The closing revelation is this: the very trap that once kept Libra bound is also the initiation that sets them free. By facing their fear of conflict, by daring to live without masks, by embracing both the beauty and the shadow of their nature, they discover that balance is not fragile, it is eternal. To embody sacred balance is not to please everyone, but to live truth so fully that the scales steady of their own accord. And when Libra does this, they become not just seekers of harmony, but its living embodiment, a reflection of the cosmic order itself, where every soul is weighed and every truth is honored in the light of eternity. If this journey into Libra's hidden trap has opened something in you, then don't let it end here. There are more secrets waiting, more truths buried beneath the masks of history, more revelations written in the stars and in your soul. So take the next step. Watch the other stories we've uncovered. Let them guide you deeper into the mysteries that were never meant to be forgotten. And if this spoke to you, subscribe to The Hidden Voyage. Leave your reflections in the comments. Share this with someone who is still searching for balance. And let your voice be part of the awakening, because the scales are shifting and your presence matters more than you know. Welcome to The Hidden Voyage. Welcome home, Soul Whisper and Soul Creator. The Hidden Voyage